Blood dripped from my claws as the last of the Alpha King's elite warriors crumpled at my feet, his throat torn open in a spray of crimson that painted the frozen ground. My wolf, the beast they said I'd never have, stood over the carnage, her silver fur gleaming under the winter moon like liquid mercury. 5 of the kingdom's finest fighters lay dead or dying around me, their shocked faces frozen in disbelief. I was supposed to be wolfless. I was supposed to be nothing. But here I stood, trembling with power I didn't understand, while the entire pack watched from the shadows. And there, at the edge of the clearing, stood him, the Alpha King. Tall as an ancient oak, scarred like a battlefield, eyes burning gold in the darkness. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared at me with an expression I couldn't read, something between hunger and recognition, like he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. Then his voice cut through the silence, deep and absolute, a command that made even my wild wolf pause. Clean her and bring her to me. Welcome, besties, my amazing family. I'm so happy to have you here once again. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss any of our powerful stories. And please take a quick second to like this video, drop a comment, and share it with someone who loves emotional stories. It really helps the channel grow and boosts our community. Now get comfortable, because today's story is intense. Let's dive right in. 20 minutes earlier, Amelia had been running for her life. Her human legs burned as she crashed through the winter forest, branches tearing at her clothes and skin. Behind her, she could hear them, the hunting party sent by Beta Garrick to finish what he'd started 3 days ago when he'd declared her a threat to pack stability. Wolfless Amelia, who couldn't shift, who couldn't fight, who had no business being alive in a world where strength was everything. There she is. The shout came from her left, too close, and Amelia veered right, her lungs screaming for air. She'd known this was coming. Ever since the night she'd stumbled upon Beta Garrick and Elder Moira performing that dark ritual in the Forbidden Grove, whispering about power that didn't belong to them, about stealing what should have gone to the Alpha King's bloodline. She'd seen too much. I heard too much. And when Garrick had looked up and locked eyes with her through the trees, she'd known she was already dead. The arrow struck her shoulder blade with enough force to spin her around. Amelia went down hard, her chin cracking against a fallen log. Pain exploded through her body, white-hot and all-consuming. She tried to crawl, fingers digging into frozen earth, but a boot connected with her ribs and flipped her onto her back. Should have minded your business, little mouse. Garrick stood over her, his face twisted in cruel satisfaction. 2 of his personal guards flanked him, Marcus and Thorn, both known for their brutality. Can't have you running to the Alpha King with tales about things that don't concern you. Amelia coughed, tasting copper. He'll know. When I disappear, he'll investigate. You? Garrick laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. You're nobody, Amelia. A wolfless orphan the pack tolerates out of pity. The Alpha King doesn't even know you exist. Your death will be noted and forgotten by morning.
He was right.
She knew he was right. In a pack of over 3,000 wolves, she was invisible. Another nameless Omega who cleaned the Great Hall and kept her head down. Nobody would miss her. Nobody would care. Garrick pulled a silver blade from his belt, the metal gleaming with dark intent. Make it quick, he told Marcus. We have the ritual to complete before the moon set. Marcus moved forward, his own blade appearing in his hand. Amelia closed her eyes, waiting for the end. She thought of her mother, dead these 10 years. Of the father she'd never known. Of the life she'd never really lived because she'd been too afraid, too broken, too worthless to claim any piece of it for herself. But then something happened. Something inside her chest, behind her ribs, deeper than bone, something ancient and furious, woke up. It started as heat, spreading through her veins like liquid fire. Amelia's eyes snapped open, and she saw Marcus hesitate, his blade raised, his nostrils flaring as he scented something that made his wolf recoil in instinctive fear. "What?" Garrick started, but he never finished. The transformation hit Amelia like lightning striking flesh. Her bones shattered and reformed in a symphony of agony that should have killed her, but instead made her stronger. Her scream became a howl, raw and primal, and then she wasn't human anymore. She was a wolf, but not like any wolf the pack had ever seen. Her fur gleamed silver white, almost luminescent in the moonlight. She was massive, nearly the size of an alpha, with eyes that burned like molten amber. Power radiated from her in waves that made the very air shimmer and crack. Marcus stumbled backward, his face draining of color. "Impossible," he whispered. "She's wolfless. She can't." Amelia's wolf didn't give him time to finish. She moved with speed that defied physics, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. Her jaws clamped around Marcus's throat and ripped outward, severing arteries and windpipe in one brutal motion. He dropped, blood fontaining from the wound, his eyes wide with shock and terror. Thorn tried to run. Amelia's wolf caught him in 3 bounds, her claws shredding through his back and spine. His scream cut off abruptly as her teeth found his neck, shaking him like prey until his body went limp. Garrick had shifted into his brown wolf, larger and more experienced, but Amelia's beast didn't care about experience. She cared about survival, about rage, about all the years of being told she was nothing, worth nothing, meant for nothing. They collided in a clash of fur and fangs, rolling across the blood-soaked ground. Garrick was a trained fighter, a beta with decades of combat experience, but Amelia's wolf fought with something he couldn't match, absolute, unrestrained fury born of a lifetime of suppression. She felt his teeth sink into her shoulder, felt her own claws rake across his ribs. The pain was distant, unimportant. All that mattered was the kill, the need to tear apart everything that had ever hurt her, diminished her, denied her existence. Garrick's wolf yelped when she locked her jaws around his front leg and twisted, breaking bone. He tried to retreat, tried to submit, but Amelia's beast saw no submission. Only enemies. Only threat. Only prey. She went for his throat. Garrick shifted back to human in desperation, hoping the wolf would hesitate to kill a man in human form, but he'd miscalculated. Amelia's wolf saw only the beta who'd tried to murder her, who'd called her worthless, who'd decided her life meant nothing. Her jaws closed around his neck, and she bit down with enough force to crush his windpipe. Garrick made a horrible gurgling sound, his hands clawing uselessly at her massive head, and then he went still. The silence that followed was absolute. Amelia's wolf stood in the center of the carnage, her muzzle dripping with blood, her chest heaving. Around her lay the bodies of 3 pack members, a beta and 2 elite guards. She'd killed them all. She, the wolfless Omega who wasn't supposed to exist. And then she felt them, the presence of others, gathering in the shadows. Her wolf's ears swiveled, catching the sound of heartbeats, of breathing, of whispered shock and fear. The hunting party hadn't been just 3 wolves. There had been others, witnesses who'd held back to watch what they'd thought would be a simple execution. Now they surrounded her in a loose circle, at least a dozen wolves in various states of shift, all staring at her with expressions ranging from terror to awe to calculation. "She killed the beta," someone whispered, the voice shaking. "She killed Garrick. Look at her wolf. I've never seen anything like it. Silver fur. That's the mark of..." "Don't say it. Don't even think about it." Amelia's wolf snarled, a warning that made several of them take an involuntary step backward. She didn't know what was happening to her, didn't understand the power coursing through her body or how she'd suddenly shifted after 23 years of being wolfless. All she knew was that she was cornered, covered in blood, and these wolves were trying to decide whether to attack or flee. Then the crowd parted. He moved through them like a force of nature, tall and broad-shouldered, his presence so commanding that even Amelia's wild wolf went still. Alpha kin Caspian Thorn. She'd seen him before, of course. Everyone in the pack knew what he looked like. But she'd never been this close, never felt the full weight of his authority bearing down on her like physical pressure. He was beautiful in the way ancient mountains are beautiful, hard and unyielding, carved by time and violence into something that demanded reverence. His face was scarred, a jagged line running from his left temple down to his jaw, a souvenir from the border wars. His eyes were the gold of old coins, burning with intelligence and power. His hair was dark as midnight, pulled back from his face in a way that emphasized the sharp angles of his features. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a shirt that did nothing to hide the warrior's build beneath, but he didn't need royal finery to announce what he was. Authority radiated from him in waves that made even the most dominant wolves in the pack lower their eyes in instinctive submission. Caspian stopped at the edge of the killing ground, his gaze moving slowly over the carnage. Marcus, throat torn out. Thorn, spine shredded. Garrick, neck crushed, his dead eyes staring at the sky. Then the Alpha King's attention shifted to Amelia's wolf, and the intensity of that stare made her beast want to bare her throat in submission, even as every instinct screamed at her to hold her ground. Fascinating, Caspian said, his voice deep and measured, carrying easily through the frozen air. He took a step closer, ignoring the nervous shuffling of the wolves around him. All these years, and you were hiding right under our noses. Amelia's wolf growled, a warning that would have been laughable if she hadn't just killed 3 trained fighters. But Caspian didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just watched her with those unsettling gold eyes, reading something in her that she couldn't begin to understand. She's dangerous, Alpha King, one of the watching wolves said, his voice tight with fear. She slaughtered the beta, without provocation. She needs to be put down before. Provocation? Caspian's gaze flicked to the speaker, and the wolf immediately fell silent. Garrick brought a hunting party to kill an unarmed pack member in the forest. 3 trained warriors against 1 supposedly wolfless Omega. Tell me, Darius, what part of that sounds like without provocation to you? Darius lowered his head, submitting immediately. I apologize, Alpha King. I spoke out of turn. You did. Caspian's attention returned to Amelia's wolf, and he took another step forward, moving with the casual confidence of someone who never feared anything in his life. The question is, what am I going to do with you? Amelia's wolf backed up a step, her hackles rising. She didn't want him closer. Didn't want anyone closer. Her mind was chaos, her wolf's instincts warring with her human confusion, the taste of blood still hot in her mouth. You can't stay in this form forever, Caspian continued, his tone almost conversational. Eventually, you'll shift back, and when you do, you'll be vulnerable. Exhausted. Unable to defend yourself against all the wolves who now see you as a threat. He was right. Amelia could feel it already, the trembling in her legs, the way her vision was starting to blur at the edges. The shift had taken everything from her, and maintaining this form was draining what little she had left. She'd collapse soon, and then she'd be at their mercy. Caspian seemed to read her thoughts in the cant of her ears, the tension in her body. But you're not going to attack me, are you? He said softly, taking another step. Because some part of you, the human part that's still aware beneath all that rage and fear, knows that I'm not your enemy. Was he? Amelia's wolf wasn't sure. Her human mind didn't know. The Alpha King was law, power, absolute authority. He could order her death with a word, and no one would question it. But he was also standing between her and the dozen wolves who wanted her dead, and there was something in his eyes that didn't look like the desire to kill. It looked like recognition. I'm going to make you an offer, Caspian said, now close enough that Amelia's wolf could smell him, pine and smoke and something wilder, something that called to the beast inside her in a way she didn't understand. You submit to my authority, here and now, and I guarantee your safety. You fight me, and I'll be forced to put you down myself. Choose. Amelia's wolf snarled, not in aggression but in frustration.
Submit?
After finally finding the strength to fight back, to refuse to be crushed beneath the weight of pack hierarchy and violence and casual cruelty, her beast wanted to tear into him just to prove she could, just to show that she wasn't something to be ordered around. But her human mind understood the calculation. She was outnumbered, exhausted, and surrounded. Caspian Thorn was the most powerful alpha in 3 kingdoms, a warrior who'd won the throne through combat and held it through sheer dominance. Fighting him was suicide. More importantly, he was offering protection. Safety. Something she'd never had in her entire life. Amelia's wolf stared at him for a long, tense moment, weighing options that all ended in pain. Then, slowly, she lowered her head. Not a full submission, her pride wouldn't allow that, but enough to signal she wasn't going to challenge him. Caspian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. Or approval. Good, he said quietly. Then he raised his voice, addressing the watching wolves. This Omega is under my personal protection as of this moment. Anyone who harms her or threatens her answers to me directly. Is that understood? A chorus of yes, Alpha King, rippled through the crowd, some voices more reluctant than others. Caspian ignored them, his focus entirely on Amelia's wolf. Shift back, he ordered, his tone gentler now but still carrying the weight of command. I know you're scared. I know you don't understand what's happening. But I need you human if we're going to talk. Amelia's wolf resisted, every instinct screaming at her to stay in this powerful form where she could fight, could defend herself. But the exhaustion was crushing her now, and she could feel her hold on the shift weakening. Better to do it on her own terms than to collapse and shift involuntarily. She closed her eyes and reached for her human form. The shift back was even more painful than the first transformation, like being turned inside out and reassembled incorrectly. Her bones cracked and reformed, her fur receding into skin, and then she was kneeling naked in the blood-soaked snow, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Someone, one of the female wolves, threw a cloak over her shoulders before Amelia even registered her vulnerability. She clutched the fabric around herself, trying to cover her nakedness, trying to process everything that had just happened. Look at me, Caspian commanded, and Amelia found herself obeying before she could think better of it. Up close, the Alpha King was even more intimidating. His eyes burned into hers, searching for something, seeing things she wasn't sure she wanted him to see. Blood spattered his boots, Garrick's blood, Marcus's blood, Thorn's blood. Evidence of what she'd done, of the monster she'd become. What's your name? He asked, his voice surprisingly gentle for someone who ruled through force. Amelia, she managed, her voice hoarse from screaming during the shift. Amelia Gray. Amelia Gray, he repeated, as if testing the name. How long have you been able to shift? I couldn't, she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I've never been able to shift. I was wolfless. Everyone knew I was wolfless. But then Garrick, he was going to kill me, and it just happened. I don't know how. I don't know why. Caspian's expression remained unreadable, but she saw his jaw tighten. Why was Beta Garrick trying to kill you? Amelia hesitated. Even now, with the Beta dead at her feet, the fear of speaking out felt insurmountable. But she'd already killed him. There was no going back from that. I saw him, she said quietly. 3 nights ago, in the Forbidden Grove. He and Elder Moira were performing some kind of ritual. Dark magic. They were talking about stealing power, about taking what belonged to your bloodline. I didn't mean to see it. I was just gathering herbs for the healers, and I stumbled on them by accident. But Garrick saw me, and I knew he'd kill me to keep it secret. The temperature around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. Caspian's eyes went cold, ancient gold turning to ice, and several of the watching wolves took involuntary steps backward. Amelia felt the full weight of his fury radiating outward, a pressure that made it hard to breathe. "Moira," he said, the name coming out like a curse. "Where is she?" "I don't know," Amelia said quickly. "I haven't seen her since that night. After Garrick found me, I've been hiding, trying to stay alive until I could figure out what to do." Caspian was silent for a long moment, and Amelia could practically see him processing information, making connections, formulating plans. When he finally spoke again, his voice was controlled, but laced with deadly promise. "Kalen." A man stepped forward from the crowd, tall, lean, with the bearing of a seasoned warrior. "Alpha King. Find Elder Moira. Bring her to me alive if possible. If she resists, use whatever force necessary." "Yes, Alpha King." Kalen melted back into the shadows, several other wolves following him. Caspian's attention returned to Amelia, and some of the coldness left his expression. "You did the right thing, trying to tell someone. And you did what you had to do to survive. The beta's death is justified." The relief that washed through Amelia was so intense she almost collapsed. She'd killed 3 pack members. In most packs, that would mean execution regardless of the circumstances. But the Alpha King was absolving her, declaring the kills justified, protecting her from the consequences.
Why?
She didn't understand. Why would he care about one worthless Omega? "Can you stand?" Caspian asked, and when Amelia nodded shakily, he held out his hand. She stared at it for a moment, at the scarred knuckles and calloused palm, at the implicit offer of support from the most powerful man in the kingdom. Then she reached out and took it, letting him pull her to her feet. His hand was warm, solid, and the contact sent a strange shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. "Clean her and bring her to me," Caspian said, addressing the female wolf who'd provided the cloak. "See that she's fed and given proper clothes. She's to be housed in the North Tower until I decide what to do with her." The North Tower. Amelia knew what that meant. It was where the Alpha King kept his most valuable assets and his most dangerous prisoners. She wasn't sure which category she fell into. "Yes, Alpha King," the woman said, stepping forward to guide Amelia away. But before they could move, Caspian caught Amelia's chin in his hand, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. The contact was electric, sending heat racing through her body despite her exhaustion. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, a gesture that felt almost possessive. "You're mine now, Amelia Gray," he said softly, the words meant only for her. "Under my protection and my authority. No one touches you without answering me. Do you understand?" Amelia nodded, not trusting her voice. She understood the words, but she didn't understand what they meant. Why her? Why this sudden, intense focus from a man who'd never acknowledged her existence before tonight? Caspian's eyes searched hers for another moment, and then he released her and stepped back. "Take her," he ordered, and the female wolf, whose name Amelia would learn was Lyra, gently pulled her away from the killing ground, away from the blood and the bodies and the watching eyes of the pack. As they walked through the forest toward the great keep, Amelia risked one glance back. Caspian stood alone in the clearing, surrounded by corpses, his gaze fixed on something in the distance. Even from here, she could feel the weight of his presence, the absolute authority that made him king. And she wondered, with a mixture of fear and something she didn't want to examine too closely, what exactly she'd gotten herself into. Quick pause if this story has you hooked. Tap like and drop your thoughts below. Now, back to the story. The North Tower was nothing like Amelia had imagined. She'd expected a cell, stone walls and iron bars, the kind of prison befitting someone who'd just slaughtered 3 pack members. Instead, Lyra led her to a circular room near the top of the tower, furnished with a large bed covered in furs, a fireplace already burning hot, and even a private bathing chamber carved into the stone. The Alpha King wants you comfortable, Lyra explained, drawing a bath and adding herbs that made the waters smell like lavender and pine. He's particular about how his people are treated. His people. The word stuck in Amelia's mind as she lowered herself into the steaming water, hissing as it found every cut and bruise on her body. She wasn't his people. She was nobody, an omega without family or status or value. Yet here she was, being bathed in the Alpha King's private tower, treated with a care and attention she'd never experienced. Lyra was gentle as she washed the blood from Amelia's hair and skin, her touch professional, but not unkind. She didn't ask questions about what had happened in the forest, didn't comment on the extent of Amelia's injuries or the way her hands still trembled. She simply did her job with quiet efficiency. When Amelia was clean, Lyra helped her into a simple but well-made dress, soft fabric that didn't chafe against her wounds. Then she brought food, hot soup, fresh bread, and tea that tasted of honey and chamomile. Amelia ate mechanically, her body demanding sustenance even though her mind was too chaotic to appreciate the taste. "The Alpha King will send for you tomorrow," Lyra said as she gathered the empty dishes. "Rest tonight. You're safe here." Safe. The word felt foreign, like a language Amelia had never learned to speak. How could she be safe when everything had changed so violently, so completely? When she'd killed 3 pack members and awakened a wolf she'd never known existed. When the Alpha King himself had claimed her as his, whatever that meant. But exhaustion was pulling at her, the bone-deep weariness of the shift and the trauma catching up all at once. Amelia barely registered Lyra leaving, barely felt herself crawl into the massive bed. The furs were soft and warm, and despite everything, sleep claimed her within moments. She dreamed of gold eyes and blood on snow, of a voice commanding her to submit, of hands that felt like both safety and possession. Amelia woke to sunlight streaming through the narrow windows and the sound of someone moving around her room. She jerked upright, her heart racing, her body immediately going into fight-or-flight mode before she remembered where she was. Lyra stood by the fireplace, adding wood to revive the flames from the night before. "Good morning," she said calmly, as if Amelia hadn't just startled like a spooked deer. "I brought breakfast and fresh clothes. The Alpha King requests your presence in his study in 1 hour." 1 hour. Amelia's stomach clenched with anxiety. What does he want? To talk. Lyra set a tray on the small table by the window, more food than Amelia could possibly eat alone. "Eat first. You need your strength." After Lyra left, Amelia forced herself to eat, though her appetite was non-existent. Her body was stiff and sore from the shift, unfamiliar muscles protesting every movement. She dressed carefully in the clothes Lyra had left, another simple dress, this one in deep forest green, with a wool cloak to ward off the winter chill. When the hour was nearly up, Lyra returned to escort her through the keep. Amelia had lived here her entire life, but had never ventured into the private sections where the Alpha King conducted his business. The corridors were wider here, the stone walls hung with tapestries depicting battles and hunts, the scent of power and dominance, so thick she could taste it. They stopped before a heavy oak door. Lyra knocked once, and Caspian's voice came from within. "Enter." The study was vast, lined with books and maps, dominated by a massive desk carved from dark wood. Caspian stood by the window, his back to the door, looking out over the packlands. He'd changed into formal clothes, dark pants and a shirt with a royal crest embroidered over the heart, but he still moved with a warrior's grace as he turned to face her. "Leave us," he told Lyra, and she bowed before exiting and closing the door behind her. Suddenly, Amelia was alone with the Alpha King, and the room felt much smaller than it had a moment ago. Caspian studied her in silence for a long moment, those gold eyes cataloging every detail, the way she stood with her shoulders back despite her fear, the fading bruises on her throat, the tension in her jaw. Amelia forced herself to meet his gaze, though every instinct screamed at her to look away, to submit, to make herself small and unthreatening. "How do you feel?" he asked finally, his voice lacking the commanding edge from the night before. He sounded almost concerned. "Sore," Emilio admitted.
"Confused."
"Scared." "Honest." A hint of approval crossed his features.
"Good."
"I have no use for people who tell me what they think I want to hear." He gestured to the chairs by the fireplace.
"Seat."
"We have much to discuss." Amelia moved carefully to the indicated chair, hyper-aware of how close he was when he settled into the chair across from her. This close, she could see the flecks of amber in his gold eyes, the way his jaw tightened when he was thinking, the barely visible scars that marked him as a survivor of countless battles. "First," Caspin said, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, "I need you to tell me everything you remember about that night in the Forbidden Grove. Every detail, no matter how small." So Amelia told him. She described going to gather moonflowers for the healers, how she'd heard voices and followed them out of curiosity. She recounted the ritual circle drawn in blood, the dark symbols she didn't recognize, the way Moira and Garrick had chanted in a language that made her teeth ache. She told him about the conversation she'd overheard, fragments about ancient bloodlines and stolen power, and the king will never know until it's too late. Caspian's expression grew darker with every word, a cold fury building behind his eyes that made the air in the room feel dangerous. "Moira has been my pack's eldest for over 60 years, he said when Amelia finished. "I trusted her counsel, relied on her knowledge of the old ways." His hands clenched into fists, and she was plotting against me the entire time. "I'm sorry," Amelia said quietly, though she didn't know why she was apologizing. "Don't be." Caspin's gaze snapped to hers. "You uncovered a betrayal that could have destroyed this pack. You risked your life to expose it. That takes courage."
"Courage."
No one had ever called her courageous before. Weak, yes. Worthless, certainly. But courageous? "I didn't mean to," Amelia said. "I was just trying to survive." Survival is its own form of courage. Caspian stood and moved to the window again, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the morning light. "Which brings me to the second matter we need to discuss. Your wolf." Amelia's heart rate spiked. "I don't understand what happened. I've never been able to shift before. The healers tested me when I was 12. They said I had no wolf spirit, that I was completely human except for the pack bond. They were wrong." Caspian turned to face her, and there was something in his expression she couldn't quite read, intensity mixed with what might have been recognition. "Or more accurately, your wolf was there all along. Dormant. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For the right trigger." He crossed back to her, moving with that predatory grace that made her pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Tell me, Amelia, what do you know about primal wolves?" The term was vaguely familiar, something from old stories the Omegas used to whisper about during long winter nights. "They're myths," Amelia said slowly. "Ancient wolves with power beyond normal shifters. They're supposed to be extinct." "Not extinct." Caspian crouched in front of her chair, bringing himself to eye level with her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body.
"Rare."
"So rare that most wolves live their entire lives without encountering one. But they exist, Amelia. And I believe you're one of them." The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. "That's impossible."
"I'm nobody."
"I'm an Omega without even a proper family name." Primal wolves were supposed to be royal bloodlines, powerful alphas. "That's what the stories say," Caspian interrupted gently. "But the stories are incomplete. Primal wolves don't follow the same rules as the rest of us. They can appear in any bloodline, triggered by trauma or extreme circumstances. Your wolf wasn't dormant because you were weak, Amelia. She was dormant because she was too powerful to emerge safely until you absolutely needed her." Amelia stared at him, her mind reeling. "But I don't feel powerful." I feel broken, because you don't know how to control what you are yet. Caspian's hand reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was surprisingly gentle for a man with such a fearsome reputation. That's why I brought you here. Why do I put you under my personal protection? I'm going to teach you to harness your power, to become the weapon you were meant to be. Weapon. The word sent a chill through her. I don't want to be a weapon. What you want is irrelevant. The gentleness left his voice, replaced by the steel of command. Elder Moira has vanished. My scouts found evidence of her ritual site, and it's worse than we thought. She was attempting to siphon power from the ancestral bloodlines, specifically targeting my connection to the pack bond. If she'd succeeded, she could have weakened me enough to stage a coup. But she didn't succeed, Amelia said, because I interrupted her. You interrupted one ritual. But magic like that doesn't happen overnight. She's been working on this for months, maybe years. And now that she knows she's been discovered, she'll either go into hiding or accelerate her plans. Caspian stood, towering over her, his presence overwhelming. Which means I need every advantage I can get. Including you. There it was. The real reason for his protection, his interest. She wasn't special to him. She was useful. A tool to be wielded against his enemies. The disappointment that crashed through Amelia was irrational and unwelcome. What had she expected? That the Alpha King had rescued her out of the goodness of his heart? That he saw her as anything more than a convenient asset? I see, she said, her voice carefully neutral. So, I'm to be your weapon against Moira and whoever else is working with her. Caspian's eyes narrowed. You say that like it's a bad thing. Being used isn't exactly a thrilling prospect. Everyone in this pack is used, Amelia. That's how a pack functions. The hunters hunt. The warriors fight. The healers heal. Each wolf contributes according to their abilities. He crossed his arms over his chest. Or would you prefer I send you back to scrubbing floors in the Great Hall, pretending you're still powerless while Moira's allies hunt you down? Put that way, it didn't sound like much of a choice. Amelia closed her eyes, trying to think past the fear and confusion. What exactly would this training involve? Learning to shift at will. Controlling your wolf instead of letting her control you. Combat training, both in wolf form and human. Strategic thinking. Everything you need to survive what's coming. And in exchange? In exchange, you pledge your loyalty to me personally. Not to the pack, not to the kingdom, to me. You become mine, Amelia. My wolf, my weapon, my responsibility. His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. And my protection. There was something in the way he said mine that made a heat pool in Amelia's stomach, a possessiveness that should have terrified her but instead sparked something wild and hungry in her chest. Her wolf stirred at the claim, responding to it in a way that made no logical sense. I don't understand why you want this, Amelia said, opening her eyes to find him watching her with that unnerving intensity. You could have any warrior in the pack. Why me? Caspian was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made her think he was telling her something important, something true. Because primal wolves are supposed to be dead, Amelia. The last confirmed one was killed 300 years ago during the Great Purge. But here you are, a primal wolf who appeared out of nowhere in my pack, at the exact moment I needed one most. He moved closer, and she caught his scent again, pine and smoke and wild things. Some would call that fate. I call it an opportunity I'd be a fool to waste.
Fate.
The word hung between them, heavy with implications Amelia wasn't ready to examine. But she understood the core truth. She had no real choice here. Refuse Caspian, and she'd be vulnerable to Moira's revenge, to the pack's fear, to 100 different threats she couldn't fight alone. Except, and she'd at least have protection, training, a purpose beyond mere survival. What happens if I can't learn? She asked. If my wolf is too wild to control, then we'll find another way. Caspian's hand came to rest on the arm of her chair, caging her in without quite touching her. I don't give up on my people, Amelia. And you are mine now, whether you've accepted it yet or not. The certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction, made something in Amelia's chest loosen. It wasn't trust, she barely knew him, but it was close. A tentative belief that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she'd always been. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. I'll train with you. Satisfaction flashed across Caspian's features, and he straightened, offering her his hand. Then we start now. The training grounds were empty when they arrived, cleared by Caspian's order to give them privacy. The space was vast, packed earth surrounded by wooden posts and targets, weapons racks along the walls, and a clear view of the forest beyond the keep's walls. Amelia wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly conscious of how inadequate her dress was for combat training. But Caspian had thought of that too. Lyra appeared with leather pants and a tunic, practical boots, and even a fur-lined cloak. Change behind the equipment shed, Caspian instructed. We'll begin with the basics. When Amelia emerged in her new clothes, she found Caspian stripped down to just his pants, his scarred torso bare despite the winter cold. He moved through a series of stretches with fluid grace, each movement deliberate and controlled. First lesson, he said without looking at her. Your wolf is not separate from you. She's not some beast you cage and release when convenient. She's you, Amelia, the truest, most primal version of yourself. Until you accept that, you'll never have full control. Amelia thought about the rage she'd felt during her first shift, the absolute fury that had driven her to kill 3 trained warriors. She feels separated. She feels dangerous. Because you're afraid of her. Caspian finally turned to face her, and even across the distance of the training ground, his presence was magnetic. You've spent your whole life being told you're weak, powerless, worthless. And then suddenly you discover you have more power than you ever imagined. Of course you're afraid. Fear is natural. But it's also an obstacle we need to overcome.
How?
By facing it head-on. He gestured for her to approach. Shift for me. Panic spiked through Amelia. I don't know how. Last night it just happened. Because you were terrified and fighting for your life. That kind of extreme emotion can trigger a shift in wolves who haven't learned control yet. Caspian moved closer, circling her like a predator studying prey. But you can't rely on terror every time you need your wolf. You need to find the connection consciously, deliberately. I don't know where to start. Close your eyes. His voice came from behind her now, close enough that she could feel his breath on her neck. Feel your heartbeat. Feel the blood moving through your veins. Your wolf is in there, just beneath the surface. All you have to do is reach for her. Amelia closed her eyes and tried to focus, but all she could feel was Caspian's presence behind her, the heat of his body, the way her own pulse hammered in response to his proximity. You're distracted, he observed, amusement coloring his tone. Is it me? Yes, Amelia admitted, because what was the point in lying? She felt rather than saw his smile. Good. Use it. That awareness of me, that heightened sensitivity, that's your wolf responding to an alpha's presence. Follow that feeling down, deeper. Let it guide you to her. It was easier said than done. Amelia tried to focus on the sensation of awareness, the prickle of anticipation along her skin, the way her wolf seemed to perk up when Caspian was near. She reached for that connection, searching for the beast that had torn through her chest the night before. Nothing happened. I can't find her, Amelia said, frustration bleeding into her voice. Yes, you can. Caspian's hands settled on her shoulders, warm and solid. You're trying too hard. Stop thinking and just feel. His touch sent electricity racing through her body, and Amelia gasped as her wolf surged forward in response, pressing against her skin from the inside, desperate to get closer to the alpha touching them. The sensation was overwhelming, too much sensation, too much power, too much everything. There she is, Caspian murmured, his voice dropping into a register that vibrated through her bones. Hold on to that feeling. Don't let her take control, but don't push her away either. Find the balance. Balance. While her wolf was clawing at her insides and Caspian's hands were burning through her clothes and every nerve in her body was screaming with conflicting impulses.
Sure. Easy.
But then something clicked. Some understanding that she couldn't articulate but could feel, the realization that her wolf wasn't trying to take over. She was trying to protect them, to be strong for them, to show the alpha what they were worth. The aggression wasn't about dominance. It was about survival, about proving they deserved to exist. Amelia stopped fighting and let her wolf rise to the surface. Not a full shift, but enough that she could feel the change, her senses sharpening, her strength increasing, her awareness expanding to encompass every sound and scent and movement around her. Good, Caspian said, approval rich in his voice. Very good. Now hold it there. Don't shift completely, just maintain this in-between state. It was harder than it sounded. Her wolf wanted to complete the shift, to become fully beast and run and hunt and fight. But Amelia held firm, keeping them balanced on the knife's edge between human and animal. How long can you maintain this? Caspian asked. I don't know. Not long. Already she could feel the strain, the way her muscles trembled with the effort of holding two forms at once. That's normal. It takes practice to build endurance. His hands left her shoulders, and Amelia almost whimpered at the loss of contact. Open your eyes. She did, and the world was different. Colors were more vivid, sounds sharper, scents more complex. She could smell the earth beneath the packed snow, the oil Caspian had used on the weapons, the faint trace of other wolves who'd trained here recently. And overlaying it all was Caspian's scent, stronger now, more intoxicating, calling to something deep in her wolf's instincts. What do you see? He asked, moving to stand in front of her. Everything, Amelia breathed. It's like the world just opened up. That's what it means to be a wolf. Caspian's eyes gleamed with something that might have been pride. Most shifters only experience this level of sensory input in full wolf form. But primal wolves can access it while human, one of many advantages you'll learn to use. He spent the next hour teaching her to maintain the partial shift, building her endurance minute by minute. When she finally collapsed, sweating and shaking, he called for water and let her rest. You did well for a first attempt, Caspian said, handing her a water skin. Better than I expected, honestly. Amelia drank deeply, her throat parched. It felt like trying to hold onto lightning.
Aggiornate description.
He settled on the ground beside her, seemingly unbothered by the cold or his state of undress. Tomorrow we'll work on full shifting. But for now, you've earned a break. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, Amelia catching her breath while Caspian gazed out at the forest. In the daylight, with his guard down, he looked younger than she'd thought, probably only in his early 30s, though his eyes held the weight of someone who'd lived much longer. Can I ask you something? Amelia ventured. You can ask. I may not answer. Why did you really claim me? And don't say it's just because I'm useful. There's something else, something you're not telling me. Caspian was quiet for so long she thought he might not respond. Then he sighed, a sound heavy with old burdens. 3 years ago, I received a prophecy from a seer in the Eastern Territories. She told me that my reign would be challenged by darkness from within, and that my survival would depend on finding the silver wolf who walks between death and life. Silver wolf. Amelia's fur had been silver when she shifted. I thought she was speaking in metaphors, Caspian continued. Prophecies usually are. But when I saw you last night, covered in blood with that silver fur gleaming in the moonlight, standing between death, the 3 you'd killed, and life, your own survival against impossible odds, I realized she'd been literal. So I'm a prophecy, Amelia said flatly. That's why you want me.
No.
Caspian turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. I want you because when I saw you standing there, fierce and terrified and absolutely magnificent, something in me recognized something in you. Pack bonds are mystical things, Amelia. Sometimes fate puts wolves together for reasons that transcend logic or strategy. You think we're fated mates, Amelia said, the words coming out before she could stop them. I think, Caspian said carefully, that fate has plans for us that we don't fully understand yet. What we do with those plans is up to us. Before Amelia could respond, a commotion from the keep drew their attention. Kalen came running across the training grounds, his face grim. Alpha King, he called. We found Moira. Caspian was on his feet instantly, all traces of vulnerability gone, replaced by the commanding presence of a king. Where? The abandoned silver mine, 20 miles north. She's not alone. There are at least a dozen wolves with her, maybe more. And they've set up some kind of ritual circle. Our scout said he could feel dark magic from a quarter-mile away. Caspian's jaw tightened. Gather the warriors. We move in 1 hour.
No.
The word came from Amelia before she could think better of it. Both men turned to stare at her, and she scrambled to her feet. I mean, take me with you. This is my fault. If I hadn't been seen, Moira wouldn't have been exposed, wouldn't have felt the need to accelerate whatever she's planning. I should be there. Absolutely not, Caspian said flatly. You barely know how to shift. Taking you into combat would be suicide. Then why train me at all? Amelia challenged, stepping closer to him despite the warning growl rumbling in his chest. If I'm supposed to be your weapon, then use me. Or was all that talk about me being a primal wolf just empty flattery? Caspian's eyes flashed dangerously. Watch your tone. Watch yours. Amelia shot back, her wolf rising to meet his authority with defiance born of desperation. You said I was yours. That means I have a right to fight beside you, to protect this pack just like any other warrior. Unless your claim was just words. The air between them crackled with tension, alpha dominance meeting primal resistance. For a long moment, Amelia thought Caspian might actually strike her, or worse, reject her claim entirely. Then he smiled, fierce and approving. You have courage, I'll give you that. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. He turned to Kalen. Have Lyra prepare combat gear for Amelia. She comes with us, but she stays close to me at all times. Understood. Kalen looked like he wanted to argue but knew better. Yes, Alpha King. As Kalen left to make preparations, Caspian caught Amelia's chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. If you die because of this decision, I'll drag you back from the afterlife myself and kill you again. Clear? Despite everything, Amelia felt her lips twitch toward a smile. Crystal. Good. He released her, but the heat of his touch lingered. Now, let's go stop a coup. The journey to the silver mine took 2 hours at wolf speed. Caspian had shifted into his massive black wolf, leading a force of 30 elite warriors through the forest with military precision. Amelia ran beside him in wolf form, still marveling at the freedom of forelegs and enhanced senses, even as terror coiled in her gut. Her shift this time had been easier, more controlled. Caspian had talked her through it before they left, his voice calm and steady as he guided her into her wolf body. The pain was still intense, but she'd been ready for it, and her wolf had surged forward eagerly, desperate to prove herself to the alpha. Now, racing through the winter forest with snow flying from her paws, Amelia felt alive in a way she never had as human. Her wolf reveled in the movement, in the pack running around them, in Caspian's powerful presence beside her. They slowed as they approached the mine, shifting back to human form to discuss strategy. Caspian's warriors moved with practiced efficiency, donning leather armor and checking weapons. Amelia accepted the gear Lyra handed her, reinforced leather that would protect without restricting movement. The mine has 3 entrances, Caspian explained, sketching a rough map in the snow. Main entrance here and 2 ventilation shafts on the east and west sides. We'll split into 3 teams. Kalen, take 10 warriors through the east shaft. Marcus, he paused, and Amelia saw the flash of grief cross his face as he remembered Marcus was dead, killed by her claws. Darius, you take the west. I'll lead the main force through the front. And me? Amelia asked. With me. Caspian's tone left no room for argument. You see Moira, you alert me immediately. You do not engage her alone. Are we clear? Amelia nodded, though her wolf chafed at the restriction. They moved into position as the sun began to set, darkness gathering between the trees. The mine entrance was a black mouth carved into the mountainside, ancient support beams rotting and treacherous. Amelia could smell the dark magic emanating from within, bitter and wrong, like fruit left too long in the sun. Caspian raised his hand, counting down silently. 3,
2, 1.
They attacked. The main tunnel was wide enough for 3 wolves abreast, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows on the walls. Amelia stayed close to Caspian as they descended, her enhanced hearing picking up sounds from deeper in the mine, chanting, the rustle of movement, the crackle of magical energy building to critical mass. The first enemy came out of nowhere, a wolf in full shift, lunging from a side tunnel with teeth bared. Caspian caught it by the throat midair and slammed it into the wall hard enough to crack stone. The enemy wolf collapsed, unconscious or dead. More came then, defenders loyal to Moira pouring from the shadows to meet Caspian's forces. The tunnel erupted into chaos, snarls and screams, the wet sound of flesh tearing, blood spraying across ancient stone. Amelia shifted without thinking, her wolf taking over as an enemy lunged for her exposed flank. She met him mid-leap, jaws closing around his foreleg and twisting viciously. Bones snapped. The wolf yelped and tried to retreat, but Amelia's beast was already moving to the next threat, her training from earlier translating into instinct-driven violence. She fought like she'd been born to it, her primal wolf faster and stronger than the defenders expected. But there were so many of them, and the tunnel was too narrow for effective maneuvering. Amelia took a slash across her ribs from an enemy's claws, felt teeth sink into her shoulder, tasted blood that wasn't hers. Then Caspian was there, his massive black wolf tearing through enemies like paper. He positioned himself between Amelia and the worst of the fighting, protecting her even as he decimated Moira's forces with ruthless efficiency. They pushed deeper into the mine, the magical energy growing stronger with each step. Finally, they broke through into a vast central chamber, and Amelia's wolf stumbled to a halt, overwhelmed by what she saw. The ritual circle was enormous, drawn in blood and filled with symbols that hurt to look at. At its center stood Elder Moira, her white hair wild around her face, her eyes black with corrupted magic. Around her stood 12 wolves in human form, all chanting in that teeth-aching language Amelia remembered from the Forbidden Grove. But worse than any of that was the figure bound in chains at Moira's feet, a young wolf, barely old enough to have completed his first shift, his terror palpable even across the distance. A sacrifice, Caspian growled, shifting back to human form. Amelia followed suit, her body protesting the rapid changes. Moira, you've gone too far. The elder stopped chanting, her black eyes fixing on them with disturbing intensity. Too far? I'm saving this pack, Caspian. Your bloodline has grown weak. The kingdom needs a stronger alpha, one who understands the old ways, who isn't afraid to use the power our ancestors left us. The power you're using is corruption, Caspian said, moving slowly forward. His warriors fanned out around him, surrounding the ritual circle. It will destroy you and everyone you forced into this madness. Then I'll die strong instead of living weak." Moira raised her hands, and the magic in the circle pulsed, making Amelia's teeth ache. "But I won't die alone. When this ritual completes, your connection to the pack bond will be severed, Caspian. And without that bond, you're just another wolf. One I can kill." She was going to do it. Going to complete the ritual and damn the young wolf at her feet just to steal Caspian's power. The realization hit Amelia like a physical blow, and her wolf surged forward, howling in rage. "Stop her," Caspian shouted, but Moira's followers formed a wall of bodies between them and the elder, buying her the seconds she needed to finish the incantation. Amelia didn't think. She just moved. Her shift was instantaneous, her primal wolf exploding forth with none of the hesitation or pain from before. She was pure instinct and fury, her silver fur blazing with power as she tore through Moira's defenders like they were made of smoke. She heard Caspian roar her name, felt his alpha command trying to call her back, but her wolf was beyond orders now. She could see only Moira, see only the threat to her alpha, to her pack, to the terrified young wolf about to be murdered for power. Moira saw her coming and raised her hands to unleash whatever dark magic she'd been gathering. But Amelia was faster. She leaped over the ritual circle, feeling the magic trying to catch her, burn her, destroy her, and crashed into the elder with enough force to drive them both to the ground. Moira screamed, the sound cutting off abruptly as Amelia's jaws closed around her throat. The magic in the circle exploded outward, wild and uncontrolled, and Amelia felt it slam into her like a physical force. Pain unlike anything she'd ever experienced tore through her body, and she heard her wolf howl in agony. But she didn't let go.
Couldn't let go.
Not until she felt Moira's pulse stutter and stop, felt the dark magic dissipate like smoke and wind, felt the ritual circle shatter and release its captive. Then darkness claimed her, and Amelia knew nothing more. She woke to warmth and softness, to the scent of herbs and clean linens. For a moment, she thought she was back in the North Tower, safe in her bed. But then memory crashed back, the mine, the ritual, Moira's dark eyes and darker magic. Amelia's eyes flew open. She was indeed in a bed, but not her own. This room was larger, more opulent, with tapestries on the walls and a fire roaring in a massive hearth. And sitting in a chair beside the bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days, was Caspian. "You're awake," he said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. "Thank the old gods you're awake." "What happened?" Amelia tried to sit up and gasped as pain lanced through her body. Every muscle felt like it had been torn apart and badly reassembled. "Easy." Caspian's hands were on her shoulders, gentle but firm, easing her back down. "You nearly died. The backlash from Moira's ritual hits you full force. You've been unconscious for 3 days. 3 days. Amelia stared at him, seeing the dark circles under his eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the way his hands trembled slightly as they touched her. The young wolf.
Alive.
Traumatized but alive. Thanks to you. Caspian's expression was unreadable. Moira's followers scattered after you killed her. We've rounded up most of them. The ones who were coerced will face re-education. The ones who participated willingly. He trailed off, but Amelia understood. They would be executed. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I know you said not to engage her alone, but I couldn't just watch her. You saved my life. Caspian's voice was rough, raw with emotion. The healers examined the ritual circle after. If Moira had completed the incantation, it would have worked. I would have lost my connection to the pack bond, and without that, he closed his eyes briefly. She would have killed me, Amelia. You stopped a coup and saved your king. I didn't think, Amelia admitted. I just knew I couldn't let her hurt you. When Caspian opened his eyes again, they burned with an intensity that stole her breath.
Why?
It was a loaded question, one Amelia wasn't sure she could answer. But looking at him now, this powerful, terrifying man who'd protected her, trained her, believed in her when no one else had, she found the words anyway. "Because you're mine too," she whispered. "You claimed me, but somewhere along the way, I claimed you back. And I protect what's mine." Something shifted in Caspian's expression, a wall coming down that she hadn't even realized was there. He leaned forward, his hand coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything about his fearsome reputation. "Amelia Gray," he said softly, "you terrify me." "Good," she managed, her heart racing. "I'd hate to be the only one who's scared." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face into something almost boyish. "I'm going to kiss you now. If you don't want that, tell me to stop." Amelia couldn't have told him to stop if her life depended on it. She nodded, and Caspian closed the distance between them, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was surprisingly gentle given the raw hunger she could feel vibrating through him. The kiss deepened gradually, Caspian's hand sliding into her hair while Amelia's fingers found the front of his shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. Her wolf purred in satisfaction, recognizing the claiming, the bond forming between them that went deeper than pack loyalty or strategic alliance. This was personal, primal, right in a way that transcended logic or reason. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caspian rested his forehead against hers. "We'll take this slow," he promised. "You've been through too much and you're still healing. But I want you to know, I'm done pretending this is just about strategy or prophecy or political advantage. I want you, Amelia. All of you. Your strength and your fear, your wolf and your humanity, your courage and your vulnerability. Everything." Tears pricked at Amelia's eyes, emotions she'd suppressed for so long finally breaking free. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I've never been wanted before. Never been valued. I don't know how to be what you need." "You already are." Caspian kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the corner of her mouth. "You're perfect exactly as you are. My silver wolf. My primal. My mate."
Mate.
The word hung between them, official and binding in a way that made Amelia's heart stutter. "Is that what we are?" "If you'll have me." Caspian pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I know I'm not an easy man. I'm possessive and demanding, and I carry more scars than just the ones you can see. But I swear to you, Amelia, I will protect you, value you, and stand beside you through whatever comes. If you'll do the same for me." It wasn't a flowery proposal. It wasn't romantic in any traditional sense. But it was honest and real, and it came from a man who'd already proven he would keep his promises. Amelia thought about everything that had led to this moment, the betrayal, the violence, the awakening of power she'd never known she possessed. She thought about the Omega she'd been, invisible and worthless, and the wolf she was becoming, strong and valued and essential. She thought about Caspian, fierce and scarred and absolutely certain in his conviction that she belonged at his side. And she realized she was certain too. "Yes," she said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I'll be your mate, your wolf, your partner in whatever insanity comes next." Caspian's answering smile was blinding. He kissed her again, deeper this time, claiming her mouth with a thoroughness that left no doubt about his intentions. When he finally pulled away, they were both flushed and breathless. "Rest now," he commanded gently, settling her back against the pillows. "We have time for everything else later. For now, you need to heal." "Will you stay?" Amelia asked, suddenly afraid he'd leave now that the immediate crisis was past. "Always." Caspian kicked off his boots and stretched out on the bed beside her, carefully arranging them so she was tucked against his side without putting pressure on her injuries. "I'm not going anywhere, Amelia. You're stuck with me now." Amelia felt herself relaxing into his warmth, the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear more soothing than any medicine. Her wolf was content for the first time since her awakening, satisfied by the proximity of their mate, by the safety of his presence. "Caspin?" she murmured, already drifting toward sleep. Thank you. For seeing me when I was invisible. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." His arm tightened around her. "Thank you for being brave enough to become who you were always meant to be. My silver wolf. My salvation." Amelia smiled against his chest and let sleep take her, secure in the knowledge that for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. She had a mate, a purpose, and power she was only beginning to understand. Whatever came next, they would face it together. You made it to the end, and that means you're truly part of the Werewolf fans family. Thank you for your support. Like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be replying as always, and stay subscribed because the next story is already waiting for you.